Hey Reddit, my name's Brandon, 34M. And until recently I was engaged to Madison, 33F. My girlfriend of 6 years. We were supposed to be planning our wedding, building a future together. Instead, I was slowly realizing that the woman I was about to marry had no idea what commitment actually meant. At 34, I'm not playing games anymore. I have a stable job, a mortgage, and a clear vision of where I want my life to go. Marriage, kids, real stability. Madison always said she wanted the same, but the way she acted told a different story. She loved attention, not just mine, not just from our close circle of friends, but from everyone. At first, I brushed it off. We were in our 20s when we got together. People flirt, people have fun, whatever. But as we got older, it didn't stop. If anything, it got worse. At dinner parties, she'd engage a little too much with the guys, touching their arms when she laughed, holding eye contact just long enough to make it suggestive. She was always the life of the party, but after a while it became clear that she needed to be. I started noticing that she never set boundaries when it came to other men. If a guy at the bar hit on her, she'd encourage it, laughing at his jokes, playing along, letting the interaction drag on just long enough for him to think he had a shot. And when I'd call her out, she'd say, "Oh, come on, Brandon, it's harmless flirting. It's just fun. You know I'd never actually do anything. You're being too sensitive." But at 34, I didn't have the patience for this kind of childish behavior. I work hard, I value my time, and the last thing I needed was a relationship that felt like a constant competition for my own fiancée's attention. The real turning point came at a dinner party we hosted for a few friends and colleagues. These weren't 20-something guys looking for a fling. These were grown men, many of them married, serious professionals who had built careers and families, and yet Madison was still acting like we were at some college bar. I watched as she poured a little too much wine into one guy's glass, teasing him about how he needed to loosen up. I saw her lean too close to another man while complimenting his suit, letting her fingers graze the fabric just a little longer than necessary. The final straw came when I walked into the kitchen and found her laughing a little too hard at something one of my colleagues said, her hand resting on his chest like they were at the beginning of some bad romantic movie. I had it. I cleared my throat, making my presence known. She turned, blinking, as if she had forgotten I existed. "Hey babe," she said with a grin. "We were just talking about..." "We need to talk," I said, my voice calm but firm. She frowned but followed me to the other side of the kitchen. "What's up?" she asked. I stared at her for a long moment. "Do you even realize what you're doing?" She sighed dramatically. "Brandon, not this again." "Yes, this again," I said. "You're engaged, but you're acting like a single woman at a bar. Madison, do you have any idea how that looks?" She rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on, we're just having fun. It's harmless." There it was, that word again. I let out a breath. "Okay, let's test that theory." She raised an eyebrow. "What if it's harmless?" she challenged. "Then let's switch roles," I said, my voice steady. "What if I went over to one of your girlfriends, touched her arm, held eye contact, laughed at all her jokes just a little too long? What if I gave her the same kind of attention you've been throwing at every guy in this house?" She opened her mouth, then closed it and scoffed. "That's different." "Is it?" I asked. "Or is it only fun when you're the one getting the attention?" Her expression darkened. "Brandon, you're being ridiculous." "No," I said. "I'm being realistic." She crossed her arms. "So what? You want me to just sit quietly and not talk to anyone?" I shook my head. "I want you to act like an engaged woman. I want you to stop treating flirting like a hobby and respect the relationship we've built." She rolled her eyes again. "You're overreacting." And that was when I knew. No matter how many times we had this conversation, she would never change. Because to Madison, this wasn't about right or wrong. It wasn't about respect or commitment. It was about her ego. She wanted to feel desired, and she didn't care if that came at my expense. So I made a decision. I took off my engagement ring, set it on the counter, and looked her in the eyes. "If you want to act single," I said calmly, "then be single." Her mouth fell open. "Brandon." "No," I interrupted. I'm not wasting another year, another month, another minute on a relationship where I constantly have to question if my fiancé is more interested in attention than in me. She stared at me, realization dawning. You're actually serious? I nodded. A heavy silence stretched between us. The party was still happening in the other room, but at that moment, it was like we were in a vacuum. Finally, she let out a breathless laugh. Wow, so that's it? That's it. I deserve better than this, I said. I grabbed my coat and walked out of my own house. The next day, I packed a bag and left. Madison blew up my phone with texts and calls, but I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because for the first time in a long time, I had made the right choice, and I wasn't going to regret it. That first night after I left, I stayed at a hotel. I could have gone to a friend's place, but I needed space, silence, time to think. My phone buzzed non-stop with messages from Madison, some angry, some desperate, all circling the same theme. Madison, are you really doing this? Madison, Brandon, come home. Let's just talk. Madison, this is ridiculous. You're throwing away 6 years over nothing. Madison, call me please. I didn't reply. I stared at the messages, feeling a strange mix of emotions. 6 years, that was a long time. We had built a life together, shared a home, made plans, and now, in the span of a single night, it was unraveling. But what got me wasn't the loss. It was the way she still didn't get it. Over nothing. That's what she thought this was. Nothing. I turned off my phone and went to bed, telling myself I'd figure things out in the morning. But when I woke up, nothing had changed. The weight on my chest was still there. The exhaustion still sat deep in my bones. I had spent years convincing myself that Madison would change, that this was a phase, that one day she would grow out of this need for validation. She hadn't, and she never would. I checked out of the hotel, grabbed a coffee, and sat in my car for a long time before finally calling my best friend, Dylan. He picked up immediately. "Dude, are you okay?" he asked. I let out a heavy breath. I left Madison. A low whistle escaped him. Holy, you actually did it? Yeah. Where are you? Just sitting in my car trying to figure out what the hell comes next. Get over here, he said. You don't need to deal with this alone. I drove to Dylan's place, and the second I walked in, he handed me a beer. Tell me everything. I sat down, ran a hand through my hair, and told him about the flirting, the constant dismissals of my concerns, the way she craved attention, and how I had finally hit my limit at the dinner party. Dylan listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and let out a long sigh. I'm going to be real with you, man. I never liked the way she treated you. I frowned. What? I didn't want to say anything before because, it's your relationship, your business. But Madison, she's been pulling this crap for years, and we all saw it. I stared at him. Who? We. Dylan hesitated. Even your sister, everyone saw the way she acted. It was obvious to everyone but you. That hit me harder than I expected. Why didn't anyone say anything? Would you have listened? Dylan asked. I opened my mouth and closed it. He had a point. I had spent so long making excuses for Madison, convincing myself that I was the one overreacting, that I was being insecure. But if my friends had noticed, if even my sister had noticed, then maybe this had never been all in my head. Maybe I had been gaslighting myself. Dylan leaned forward. So what now? I exhaled. I don't know. I need to go back to the house, pack my stuff. Dylan nodded. Want backup? I thought about it, then shook my head. Nah, I need to do this alone. He didn't argue. I drove back to the house in the afternoon, half expecting Madison to be gone. She wasn't. Her car was in the driveway, and when I stepped inside, she was sitting on the couch, looking like she hadn't slept. Her eyes were red, her hair in a messy bun, and for the first time in a long time, she looked small. She stood up when she saw me. You actually left, she said quietly. I nodded. Yeah. Her arms crossed. So you just came back to grab your stuff? I let out a bitter laugh. Wow. 6 years, and this is how it ends? You just walk out. I set my jaw. Don't do that. Don't act like I'm the one who broke this. Her eyes flashed. Oh, come on, Brandon. You're acting like I cheated on you or something. You didn't have to. You disrespected me every chance you got. You made me feel like I was lucky to have you, like I should just accept that you need constant validation from other men. That's not what a relationship is, Madison. That's not what love is. She scoffed. So you're leaving because I flirted? Because I made jokes? I shook my head. I'm leaving because I refuse to spend the rest of my life with someone who needs everyone's attention but mine. That shut her up for a long time. She just stood there, arms wrapped around herself, lips pressed into a thin line, then finally she spoke. Brandon, she said quietly, I never wanted to hurt you. I swallowed hard. I know. She ran a hand through her hair. I never thought you'd actually leave. That hit harder than it should have. Because that was a problem she thought I'd stay for. She thought I'd put up with it forever. I let out a slow breath. Well, now you know. She nodded, looking away. Do you want me to leave while you pack? I hesitated, then shook my head. No. I'll be quick. Packing up my life was surreal. Taking clothes, personal things, reminders of 6 years together, and shoving them into a suitcase. Madison didn't say much. She just sat on the bed, watching like she still couldn't believe this was happening. When I zipped my bag, I turned to face her one last time. I hope you figure things out, Madison, but I can't be here while you do. She didn't reply. I walked to the door, hesitated for a second, then left. That was the last time I saw her. It's been a few weeks now. At first, she sent a few texts, but I didn't answer. I moved in with Dylan temporarily while I figured out my next steps. It's weird starting over at 34, but honestly, it feels like a weight has been lifted for the first time in years. I'm not questioning myself. I'm not doubting my worth. I walked away from someone who didn't value me, and I know without a doubt that I made the right choice. The first few weeks after leaving Madison were a strange mix of relief and adjustment. I had gotten so used to our life together, the routines, the familiarity, that even though I knew I had made the right decision, there were moments when the quiet felt too loud. I stayed with Dylan while figuring out my next steps. He never pushed me to talk about it, but every now and then he'd make a comment like, "Dude, you seem lighter," or "You're laughing more than you used to." And he was right. I wasn't walking on eggshells anymore. I wasn't analyzing every conversation, trying to figure out if I was being too sensitive. I was just living. About a month after the breakup, Dylan and I were at a bar when my phone buzzed. I didn't even have to check to know who it was. Madison had stopped texting me every day, but every now and then she'd send something. This time it was just, "Madison, can we talk?" I stared at the message for a long moment, then locked my phone and slid it back into my pocket. Dylan noticed and nudged me. "You gonna respond?" I shook my head. "No," he smirked. That might have been the end of it. But of course, Madison wasn't the type to just let things go. 2 days later, I ran into her. It wasn't planned. I had been out looking at apartments because, as much as I appreciated Dylan's couch, I needed my own space. I stopped at a coffee shop afterward, and there she was, sitting at a table by the window, stirring a drink absent-mindedly, looking like she was deep in thought. I could have turned around. I could have walked away before she saw me. But something in me, maybe closure, maybe just curiosity, kept me there a second too long. That's when she looked up, our eyes met, and for a moment neither of us moved. Then she gave me a small, hesitant wave. I sighed and walked over. "Hey," I said. She smiled, a real one, not that flirty, attention-seeking grin she used on everyone else. "Hey," she replied, hesitating. "Mind if I sit?" "Please," she said. I sat across from her. She studied my face, and I noticed she looked different, tired, but not just physically. There was something in her expression I didn't recognize. "So, what's up?" I asked, leaning back. She let out a slow breath. I wanted to say I'm sorry. That caught me off guard. For a moment, I expected anger, manipulation, another round of "you're overreacting." But this was different. She continued, "When you left, I was angry. I told myself you were just being dramatic, that you'd come back once you calmed down. But when you didn't, I started thinking. I crossed my arms and wondered what it was I didn't respect about you." I exhaled, shaking my head. "Madison, I know." She interrupted. "It's too late. I needed you to hear it." I studied her for a long moment, trying to decide if this was real or just another way to reel me back in. But even if she was being honest, it didn't change anything, because I wasn't that guy anymore. I wasn't the guy who made excuses for her. I wasn't the guy who stayed. "I appreciate that. I really do," I said. For a second, hope flickered. "Maybe we could." "No," I said gently but firmly. "I don't hate you, Madison, but I'm not going back." She swallowed hard. "Right," she murmured. I stood up. "Take care of yourself." She nodded, looking down at her drink. I turned and walked away, feeling as though I was closing the final chapter of a book I'd been stuck in for far too long. For the first time in years, I wasn't questioning my decisions, wasn't replaying conversations in my head wondering if I'd been too harsh or too cold. I knew without a doubt I'd done the right thing. A week after that encounter, she called. I ignored the first call, then the next, and finally picked up on the fourth try. Mostly because I wanted to end whatever this was once and for all. "What do you want, Madison?" I asked, my voice flat. There was silence on the other end, then a deep sigh. I don't know how to do this." I frowned. "Do what?" "Move on." She hesitated. "We broke up weeks ago." "I know," I said. "But I don't know how to just stop." I exhaled. "Do what I did. Stop reaching out. Stop holding on to something that isn't there anymore." After a long silence, she asked something I wasn't expecting. "Brandon, did you ever actually love me?" That stopped me in my tracks. "Are you serious right now?" I asked, shocked. I don't know," she muttered. "Because if you really loved me, how did you just walk away?" I laughed bitterly. "Do you think walking away was easy? Do you think I just stopped loving you overnight?" There was silence. "I loved you, Madison," I continued, my voice growing calm. "For years, even when you made me feel like I wasn't enough, even when you pushed every limit just to see how much I'd put up with it, I loved you." She inhaled sharply, then said, "But I love myself more. That's why I walked away," I said firmly. She let out a shaky breath. "I miss you." I closed my eyes, realizing there was nothing left to say. I hung up, and that was the last time I ever spoke to Madison. Things got easier after that. I moved into a new apartment. Small, but mine. I focused on work, started going to the gym again, and reconnected with friends I'd neglected during our relationship. For the first time in years, I actually felt happy. Not just fine or comfortable, but genuinely happy. I started dating again. Nothing serious at first, just putting myself out there. It was weird, trying to navigate the dating scene in my 30s, but it was also refreshing. I went on a few casual dates, met some interesting women, and had fun without any pressure. Then, about 6 months after the breakup, I met her. Her name was Chloe. We met at a friend's wedding, one I had almost skipped because I didn't feel like sitting through hours of other people's romance. But Dylan convinced me to go, so I did, and that's where I saw her. Chloe wasn't the loudest person in the room. She wasn't the type to demand attention, but there was something about her. The way she carried herself, the way she laughed at a dumb joke, the way she seemed completely at ease with herself. We ended up seated at the same table, and within minutes, we were deep in conversation. She was funny, smart, down to earth, and most importantly, real. She didn't flirt for the sake of flirting. She didn't try to keep the entire room entertained. She didn't need constant validation. She was just herself. By the end of the night, I knew I wanted to see her again, so I asked, and she said yes. It's been 2 years since I walked away from Madison. 2 years since I finally chose me. I won't lie. There were moments in the beginning when I doubted myself, when I wondered if I'd overreacted or if I should have tried harder to make things work. But now, when I look at Chloe, the woman I love, the woman who loves me without conditions or games, I know I made the right choice. Because love isn't supposed to feel like a competition. It's not supposed to feel like you're constantly trying to earn someone's attention. It's supposed to feel easy. And for the first time in my life, it finally does.